I'd like to thank Coach Brian Brown for joining me here so we could talk a little bit, getting ready for game number 1. Strasburg High School is going to play Holyoke at Winter Field, 7 p.m. Friday night. So, Coach Brown, first of all, starting your 4th year at Strasburg High School, you've had 3 playoff appearances. Within those 3 playoff appearances, 2 state championship appearances. So you're very used to success as a football coach here at Strasburg High School. So in the early going, you got a big group out. What have you seen so far that's impressed you from this team?
Well, so far, and I knew coming into the season that we were going to be struggling a little bit on the offensive line. We had a senior offensive line last year that had a lot of experience, and we knew kind of leaving the season last year, coming into this year, that was going to be a huge fix. But what we also had was a very good skill class coming in. We got a lot of speed coming back. We got a lot of experience. Outside of our quarterback, who got hurt last year in the 3rd game, Landon Martin's come back, and he's shown tremendous confidence. So I think just coming into the season, we knew our skill was going to be the experienced group, and that we were just going to have a very inexperienced offensive line that we was going to have to deal with.
Well, speaking specifically on the offensive line, how did you have to adjust your coaching dealing with this young group? Because you had a couple years, essentially the same group of players. What are you doing now that's a little bit different?
We try not to do too much different. I think coaching has to be very consistent, and so we've been very consistent. But I think one thing that we've really had to adjust as coaches is patience. Offensive line play is probably the hardest thing to coach, and it's one of the hardest things to get kids that fluid motion that we have. So as coaches, we just had to kind of sit back and say, okay, what are our strengths with the offensive line? What are our weaknesses? What are our biggest strengths with our speed? So I've had to adjust some of my formations. I've had to adjust some of our plays. As coaches, we just had to decide, okay, we have an inexperienced line. There are certain things that we're not probably going to be very good at first. So what can we counter with? And what can we do to utilize our skills? And I think with offensive line, unfortunately, that takes time to kind of gel together. So coaching, we just have to figure out what can we do to be successful, and yet kind of be patient, allowing that offensive line to develop.
Well, you've been around this team a fair amount. You were able to go to CSU Pueblo for football camp. You also had a scrimmage last Friday night against both Brush and Burlington. What are some things about this team you're excited about?
Again, I'm excited about our skill. I'm excited about our speed. I really believe that we've got some very dynamic football players. We also kind of went back and we have a group of guys that understand what team is all about. We actually had to take 2 seniors that were starters in certain positions, and we moved them to the offensive line because we did see the struggle was a little bit bigger than we thought. Some of the kids that we kind of pieced together the offensive line at times, and we realized that these guys are giving their all. They're working hard, but we just didn't have the leadership on the offensive line that we needed. So we actually took 2 seniors, Zach Rushman and Egan Stevens. They both, again, nothing wrong with what they were doing in the positions they were, but we just knew that they were 2 individuals that we could bring back to the offensive line that would bring not only senior leadership, but just really good football knowledge. And I'll tell you what, right now, we are pretty excited about where we're at.
Now, we got to talk about your early season schedule. Start out tomorrow night against the Holyoke Dragons, but then you come back with Wiggins, Lyman, and then after the week off, the rivalry game with Bennett. So in preparation for league play, incredibly tough schedule. What do you want to accomplish in the early season getting ready for league play?
For the last 2 years, we've probably had one of, if not the hardest non-league schedules in 1A football. And a couple of the teams this year, Lyman, for instance, has a very strong non-conference schedule. But I still believe that we are playing 3 of the toughest teams in probably the toughest league of 1A. And I think a lot of times people kind of question, why are we doing that? Well, I think Strasburg, we play at a high level. We play at a level that we know that we're going to contend for not only our league title, but we want to get to the playoffs and contend for a state championship. And I truly believe that if you want to play at that caliber, then you need to play teams at that caliber. So Going into these first three games, especially Holyoke, we don't know a lot about. I know they were a playoff team last year. They got a lot of talent, they got great coaching, a lot of good players. I think Wiggins is probably one of the top 1A teams in football. And again, you go to Lyman. A lot of people have told me, well, Lyman lost so many seniors last year, they may be on a down spurt. I think Lyman's going to be as talented, if not more talented, than they've been in a long time. So, going into these three games, we're going to be tested. And I think what we're going to find out is that we are a very talented football team. I think win, lose, or draw on these three games, we're going to gain valuable confidence. We're gonna play hard. We're gonna play well. I think we got a great chance to win all three of those football games. But coming into tomorrow night, I just really hope that we have the confidence to go in and we start to gel as a football team. And I think that's just going to push us through these next 3 or 4 football games.
So, and I know you've got to watch Holyoke a little bit on film, but you're looking at last season, but sort of anticipating what players they have back. In watching the game tomorrow night, what do we expect to see from Holyoke?
What I think you're going to see with Holyoke is, number one, their quarterback, Wyatt Sprague. He's a junior. He was a starter last year, and he's very dynamic quarterback. He can run, very good arm. What I'm really impressed with him is his defensive ability. He played the safety that kind of dropped down into the box at times last year, but I believe he's going to be an outside linebacker this year. Very tenacious football player. When you look at Holyoke, they're a very dynamic football team. They kind of remind me of us at times. They have a lot of formations, a lot of different schemes. And, going into the first game, this is kind of difficult to coach because I don't exactly know what I'm going to see. You can watch one football game from last year and they run a certain scheme, and then all of a sudden the next game they don't run any plays that you saw the first week, and they run a whole different scheme the second week. So they're very dynamic, very formation heavy. They run a lot of speed stuff on the outs, and when you have a quarterback that is that talented and that smart, it's going to challenge us greatly. But I think they're young and inexperienced in the offensive line and defensive line, just kind of like we are. So I think it's going to be a great matchup, and I'm excited about tomorrow night.
Now, just to end up, you're going through a little bit of a change for yourself. This will be the first year you haven't coached your son, Matthias, as he's moved on to Nebraska Wesleyan. So how has that sort of changed your mindset, or what is it now that you look at that may keep you excited about coaching football?
I think I've always tried to champion myself as being the coach that, even though I coach my son, I tried to separate myself. I was a coach on the field and I was a dad when we got home. And I think this year, really the biggest challenge I have is trying, and I don't know how coaches have done it in the past. I've talked to other coaches that have coached their sons, and then their sons have gone off to play college football, and how do they balance that? Trying to go watch their kids play at a high level and yet still coach football. And the guys that have done it have all told me the same thing. You just figure it out. So as far as coaching goes, I really don't see a difference in what I did my first 3 years and what I'm doing this year. I love the kids that I coach. I love this football team that I'm coaching right now. I got some great kids, and gosh dang, they're hard workers. But I think the biggest thing is just trying to balance on coaching this football team and putting all my passion and energy into this, and yet still trying to catch a game on Saturday on the, on live feeds, and trying to make that trek to Lincoln, Nebraska as much as I can to watch him play.
Well, Coach, thanks for giving us a little bit of a preview, and of course, good luck tomorrow night live from Winter Field.
Thank you, Kevin.